Middle-aged man discovers an online store in another world that changes his life forever. If you dig my recaps, don't forget to subscribe and smash that notification bell. The story begins with a sequence of images depicting supernatural creatures and a man dying in his office. Following this, the scene shifts to his home, where he was calmly watering his plants, sipping coffee, and at one point during the day, watching an isekai on TV, in which a boy accesses his status menu. Shortly after, holding a tablet and browsing an online store, he is mysteriously transported to a forest of gigantic trees, where a strange little green girl appears near him. As soon as she vanishes without a trace, the man, terrified, runs through the forest and stumbles upon the skeleton of a warrior with a sword plunged into his chest. Imitating the boy from the TV isekai, he mimics the action he saw and commands the status menu to open. At that moment, a menu appears displaying his information: Kenichi Hamada, 38 years old, as well as Shangri-La and item box. Thinking he's landed in an isekai, Kenichi wonders where his HP and MP are, along with his abilities and magic. Clicking on Shangri-La, he accesses the online store where he usually shops. He then opens the item box, but since it's empty, he inserts some grass to test it before discarding it. Delighted, he comments that being in another world is just too good. To further enjoy the experience, he tries to buy food through the menu, but realizes he doesn't have enough credit. He even attempts to assess the grass he collected to see if he could exchange it for food, but of course, the item is worthless, frustrating him once again. However, glancing around, he notices the sword and the warrior's remains and exchanges it for a snack. After eating, he also buys a shovel and buries the dead warrior out of respect, as he had saved Kenichi. With the money from the sword, he purchases a bicycle, leather work boots, a sports towel, a compass, and a monocle. Biking around, he concludes that he needs to find a settlement and earn money. Later, he prepares a proper meal using a pot, stove, and everything. Leveraging his prior knowledge, Kenichi uses the money he earned to buy items and resell them at a higher price. So far, he has been doing very well in this isekai and was enjoying his stay until a pack of horned wolves appears. Panicked, Kenichi searches the store for something to defend himself. The first thing he sees is a bow and arrow, but having never used this weapon before, he decides to buy fireworks and a blowtorch to scare off the creatures. He throws the lit fireworks towards the pack, and the wolves back off a bit, but they don't give up and stay nearby. Not wanting to be outdone, Kenichi buys a slingshot and shoots at the wolves several times. This time, the wolves finally flee, allowing Kenichi to escape as fast as possible on his bicycle, delving deeper into the forest by late afternoon. As dawn breaks, he is exhausted from such an intense escape. Lifting himself up, he wonders if he has reached the edge of the forest. To check for himself, he buys a ladder, and upon climbing it, he spots a city protected by walls. In other words, now he can earn money. With this in mind, he purchases black pepper and a leather bag to try his luck within the walls. On the way, Kenichi is nearly run over by a young man driving a cart and is surprised to hear him speak Japanese, indicating that communication with the local people is possible. The cart driver offers a ride to Dahlia, assuming that's where he is headed. The young man introduces himself as Fio, a merchant. Inside the cart, there is a woman whom Fio introduces as a traveling bard and companion. After Kenichi states his name, the merchant notes the man's strange clothes and name and inquires about his intentions in Dahlia. Kenichi says he wants to do business, but Fio points out that he has no luggage, leading him to suspect that Kenichi has an item box. The bard conjures her bandolin using hers and plays a song about the fine rain that brought the man and the wind and rain in his trail of journey. His journey will begin from there. Sometime later, when they arrive in Dahlia, Kenichi helps Fio unload some boxes. In gratitude for the ride, he gives the merchant some black pepper. Fio wonders why he wants to sell such a dangerous item, as Bacopa, the spice syndicate, holds the monopoly in the region, and this pepper falls under that. If those guys see Kenichi selling this spice, the foreigner will have trouble. However, since it's a personal gift, Fio insists on paying because, according to him, local merchants love to buy things cheaply, but never accept anything for free. With that, he gives Kenichi some strange coins and leaves. Kenichi examines the coins in the item box and sees that they are 1 copper, 1 square silver, and another silver. Since the value of these coins is described, he makes 108,000 yen, roughly $700, something he could never have imagined. By late afternoon, he goes to a tavern, where a girl greets the customer, claiming it is the best in Dahlia. Kenichi informs her he came to stay, so the girl charges 1 copper coin for lodging or a small square silver for 2 meals. As he only wanted lodging, the visitor pays the copper coin, but when he needs to sign his name on the tavern's list, he remembers he doesn't know how to write in the local language. The girl notices his strange clothes and asks if he's looking for an intermediary. Actually, Kenichi tells her he intends to do business on his own. However, she explains that the Merchants Guild will not register someone who cannot read, write, and calculate. The man corrects her that he knows how to do these things, but perhaps not according to local culture. Then the receptionist asks him to imagine if she has 4 bags containing 12 rinkas each, how many rinkas she has in total. Kenichi answers 48, and the girl is impressed with the mathematical talent of this genius. Afterward, she asks for his name to write on the paper and introduces herself as Azalea. Kenichi asks her to teach him the local language in exchange for some snacks from another country as a reward. The woman didn't hesitate and accepted the offer. After enjoying the sweets given to her in Kenichi's room, she became so enamored with them that she made a point of mentioning that there was nothing like it in the kingdom of Kaden. Fulfilling her part of the agreement, Azalea taught the foreigner the native language of Kaden, and he discovered it wasn't so different from Japanese, with the numbers using the same decimal system and digits handled in the same way as Arabic numerals. While posing for a drawing and seeing how quickly the man learned to read and write, Azalea imagined that he would soon become a great merchant and consider becoming his lover. However, Kenichi thought she should avoid an old man like him, especially since he was old enough to be her father. Sometime later, Kenichi finished the drawing, leaving Azalea delighted, feeling noble for having been sketched. She then hugged the man affectionately, emphasizing that he had given her sweets and made her portrait. With that, she dragged the man somewhere and turned off the room light. The next morning, Kenichi went to the guild to register, and the receptionist asked him to fill out a form. Noticing that the papers were handwritten, Kenichi guessed that they had not yet discovered printing. After completing the paperwork and being charged a silver coin for the registration fee, nearly 50,000 yen, which would seriously dent Kenichi's wallet, he requested to pay in installments. As this was possible, the woman handed a guild ID to the foreigner. Kenichi was to keep this ID visible while conducting business, which is why Fuyu had one with him. After leaving the guild, he walked through Dahlia's market and noted that 2 lightly brown sheets of paper cost 1 copper coin, a simple dish cost 1 small square silver coin, and a low-quality knife cost 1 silver coin, which he found expensive. Suddenly, a girl approached Kenichi and offered 10 tricolor fruits for 1 copper coin. Wanting to try a variety, he picked several and took them in a bag, though he had no idea what type of fruit they were. To find out, he stored the food where the names were written. The fruits were called Rinyos, Rinzis, and Rinka, the latter of which Kenichi gave to Azalea when he returned to the tavern. The girl was overjoyed with the gift, as she loved that food. When Kenichi returned to his room, he examined his ID until he fell asleep. At dawn, he impressed Azalea by showing off his carpentry skills, setting up a sales booth by himself. Moreover, the woman noticed the nails he used and explained that hers were too weak, so she wished to buy the ones he had. With this, Kenichi envisioned a profitable business opportunity with that product. Later, he went to his street space to summon his booth that was stored in his item box. A merchant next door glanced at the foreigner's products and showed interest in the nails. Kenichi told her they cost 1 copper coin for 5, so she bought that quantity and introduced herself as Anama. As the hours passed, no one visited their stalls and Kenichi started to get bored. However, as time stretched, some people began showing interest in what he was selling in his booth, especially the nails, brought some traffic on the first day. Anama commented that the nails were selling well and thanked him for drawing customers to her stall too. Grateful for the recognition, Kenichi realized he had made 15,000 yen in profit. Perhaps he could live off selling just nails, but it was likely that imitators selling something similar would soon appear. A well-dressed man with a sword at his waist appeared at the booth, and Kenichi thought he might be a high-ranking person. The man asked to see a knife, and upon testing its sharpness, inquired about the price. Kenichi said it cost 2 silver coins. The buyer found it expensive, but having never seen such a perfect blade, he understood its value. He then asked if the seller had anything bigger than the knife, and as Kenichi didn't, he checked his shop menu while reflecting that finding something larger would be difficult. Nonetheless, he eventually found a hunting sword and offered it to the interested party, who was impressed by its beauty. However, when he heard that it cost a gold coin, he internally struggled with the desire for the item but thought it was too expensive. Kenichi wondered if he had charged too much, but knew he had to take what he could from those who could afford it. In the midst of this, a catwoman approached the booth, sniffing around until she licked Kenichi's nose. Then she was punched by 3 beastmen who were following her mildly. Kenichi was startled, having never seen such humanoid creatures before, while one of them ripped off the tarp that served as the booth's roof and showed a willingness to pay for it. Kenichi agreed to sell, but the calculations he made to charge for the 3 tarps the buyer wanted confused the beast people, who suspected the seller was a swindler. However, the swordsman assured them that the seller was correct, and embarrassed by their own foolishness, the beasts left with their tarps. Afterwards, the swordsman decided to buy the sword. After the day's work, Kenichi paid for 5 nights of lodging. Meanwhile, at a mansion, the maid Margaret showed the nails she bought to her mistress, Primula. Impressed by the quality of the items, Primula decided to also sell them in her store. After all, the motto of the Malo Mercantile Company was, "Never let an opportunity pass by." Returning to Kenichi, he decided to take a hot bath before nightfall. He thought about buying a bathing barrel, filling it with river water, and heating it on fire, but if he wanted these luxuries, he needed to earn more. By the way, he wondered how this Shangri-La worked, since the products simply appeared out of nowhere for him. Reflecting on it, the merchant thought there must be some catch to this scheme, like a fee he hadn't discovered yet but was accumulating as he bought there. In the midst of this, a dirty little girl hunted a bird in the forest to eat. Her dream was to eat until she was full. Suddenly, a man shouted for anemone, so the girl ran off. The next day, Kenichi wakes up early again to set up his stall and continue with his plan. Just like him, Anama also repeats this routine with her rug. As he arranges the necklaces in the store, he reflects that they might not be quartz or diamond, but zirconium and cut glass should still be quite valuable in this world, and he thinks it would be nice if he could attract a woman's attention with them. Meanwhile, Anama approaches and, seeing the organized accessories, comments that the shopkeeper always has good items in stock and wants to know who the supplier is, but Kenichi smiles and replies that it's a trade secret. At that moment, Margaret, the same maid from yesterday, approaches Kenichi in search of 100 clothespins, which impresses the vendor. Calculating the money he will make, he eagerly separates the items while Margaret eyes one of the necklaces for sale. She asks if it is diamond, and Kenichi informs her that it was made from polished glass. In fact, it's zirconia, but the vendor keeps quiet about that. He says the item costs 6 small silver coins, and the woman is surprised by the low price and asks him to reserve it for her. When it's time to pack up the stall to leave, Kenichi is approached by the same beasts as yesterday. Miley sneaks up and smells spices on the merchant. Hearing this, the big guys beg Kenichi to sell them some spices, although the human has no idea what they are talking about. Anama intervenes and asks the beasts to stop making unreasonable demands on the new guy in the market, as it would be terrible if he ended up in the sights of Bakeopa, the spice syndicate. With that, the trio of beast people bow to ask for forgiveness, while the surrounding inhabitants pay attention to the scene and wait for an outcome, imagining that the newcomer would never go against Bakeopa, even if it involves the soul food of the beast people. Thus, Kenichi knows he cannot sell spices, but figures there's no problem if he offers food prepared with seasoning. So he will make the food just this once, but they must eat near the river on the outskirts of the city. Hearing these words, the beast dance with joy and Anama asks to come along. Not wanting to waste time, the big guys help pack up the merchant's stall in seconds and drag him to the mentioned place. Once there, Kenichi asks his new friend to help by cutting some vegetables, and she asks if they are really vegetables because of the color. Kenichi replies that they are from a foreign land, but they are quite tasty. To diversify the menu, the beast people catch some fish and eagerly await the meal. When it's finally ready, they get excited with all the enthusiasm possible, and when they try this type of food prepared by a human for the first time, they fall madly in love at first bite. Anama even comments that they are eating with silver spoons looking like nobles, but Kenichi corrects in his mind that they are stainless steel. The beasts emphasize that a drink would go well with this dinner, and Anama tells them to show some restraint, but Kenichi is more relaxed and remembers that everyone is having fun, so he buys a 4-liter bottle of shashu online. The condition for the beasts to get this drink is not to tell anyone about this meal, and everyone agrees easily. A bit later, talking alone with the man, his fellow merchant asks if he isn't being too generous, but he sees nothing wrong with forgetting reality once in a while. Miley approaches and asks for more drink, and the human takes the opportunity to introduce himself. Similarly, from right to left, the beasts introduce themselves as Myakuro, Naimelo, and Nyanji. After that, the quartet of beast people take a dive to digest with mastery, and Kenichi throws a bar of soap for them to take a decent bath. After the bath, the merchant buys beds and warm blankets for everyone to lie down on the grass, and the people pass out right there, while Kenichi admires the sea of stars that enchants the sky with its beauty. When dawn comes again and the guy returns to the inn, Azalea questions if he stayed out all night, but not that she cares since he paid for the room. Seeing no problem with the intrusion, he tells her that he took a stroll with the beast people by the river, but Azalea responds that he could have stayed with her instead of some beast woman. Kenichi argues that there weren't only women there, so Azalea slaps his clothes and releases some silky and shiny beast woman hairs. Later, as he begins setting up his stall, the man wonders if Azalea has started to hate him because of this, but the truth is that he doesn't need women in the peaceful life he's seeking. In the midst of this, Margaret leads her mistress to the foreigner's store, then Primula approaches and enchants Kenichi with her extraordinary beauty. After controlling his feelings, he asks if the client came to buy the item he set aside for her, and Margaret makes the payment before receiving the necklace and passing it to her mistress. After hearing that the item was made of glass, Primula looks more closely and asks if the vendor is sure it's not real diamond. Kenichi confirms it's polished glass, but still the woman wants to take a look at other necklaces in case they are available. Promptly, the store owner shows more similar items, and Primula is impressed to see that he uses an item box to store them. Seeing everything there, she formally introduces herself to the shopkeeper and asks him to meet her father, the owner of the Mallow Mercantile Company. Anama tells that the Mallows are major merchants in Dahlia, and that the company's boss is a kind-hearted and much-loved man. Listening attentively, Kenichi sees this as his chance to gain contact with the major company. Soon after accepting the proposal, on the way, he comments that he has never traveled in such a fancy carriage as this, and Primula replies laughing that the nobles have even more extravagant carriages. Then she tells that she hired a craftsman to try replicating the clothespins that Kenichi sells, but the professional ended up not being able to do it, as according to him, the metal of the clothespin may seem simple, but it requires advanced technology to be made. Without delay, they arrive at a mansion that leaves the man in awe, although Primula insists it's small compared to a noble's home. Inside, Mallow introduces himself and praises the visitor's manners for doing the same. Kenichi presents the items that captivated the man's daughter, and the company owner himself seems to have fallen in love with them. Primula whispers something in her father's ear, then he asks Kenichi if he indeed has an item box. The younger salesman confirms he does, though it's small, and the older one shows his on the table. He used this box to make his company what it is today. In turn, Kenichi shares that he only uses his for storing crops, which prompts a laugh during the conversation. Speaking of which, the visitor asks why he is there, so Mallow offers Kenichi a position as a supplier for the merchant company. The visitor wonders if the tycoon can find the right market for these items and sell them for even more profit, and Mallow assures him he can. In that case, Kenichi asks if it wouldn't be easier for the businessman to buy at his store and resell them later. Mallow comments that Kenichi might not like that, and he indeed confesses he wouldn't. Additionally, Mallow reveals there's a chance company rivals might make a better offer, and securing a deal would be a way to ensure that doesn't happen. By the way, the businessman makes it clear that he couldn't stand any competitor signing an exclusive contract with Kenichi, as that would be the silliest thing a trader could do. Moreover, one of the secrets to the great profits of Mallow's merchant company is, don't be fooled by the profit in front of you. You might miss an even better business opportunity. With that said, Mallow offers to split the profits 50-50, and Kenichi shakes hands with the experienced merchant. With that handshake, the rookie gains tens of thousands on items he could buy for 2,000 or 3,000, meaning the deal is in the bag. After signing the exclusive contract, Kenichi earned over 500,000 yen from the first products he supplied, such as the cameo brooch. Enamored with the brooch, Primula herself offered 10 gold coins for one, equivalent to 2 million yen, or about 77,000 Brazilian reais. Therefore, because of deals like this, Kenichi's balance in Shangri-La had already exceeded 8 digits, so he decided to buy a house. After all, now that he had money, the middle-aged man could start the peaceful life he always wanted. Always with this in mind, he crosses the outskirts of the city until he reaches the more remote forested areas. At one point in the forest, he decides he'll set up base there. However, when he returns to the inn and finds Azalea in his room, she warns him that the area is very dangerous. Kenichi acknowledges this and argues that he won't live too far from the city walls, but the girl insists that his desire is odd. In the following days, despite his friend's warnings, the man mows the grass on the plot where he will build his home using a modern mower, also purchased at the Shangri-La store, of course. The problem is that it runs on fuel, which is an issue. To solve this, the trader bought mixed gasoline for 2-stroked engines, which is quite expensive. After all, there's not much choice besides that, since they don't sell fuel there. Eventually, he builds a road leading to his land, and after that, cuts some trees with a chainsaw and an axe. However, after completing this task, he tries to store the huge logs in his item box, but it wasn't possible due to their size. To solve this, he summons the electric saw and splits the logs into smaller pieces so he can finally store them all. Once done, he discovers that the wood only fits if it's no longer than 10 meters. After that, seeing that night is approaching, the man decides to leave the rest of the work for tomorrow. When the sun rises again, Kenichi Hamada resumes work on building his house. Alone with a shovel, he digs around the extensive root of a tree to remove it from the plot where the house would be. However, considering he still has many others to dig up and he's already exhausted from the first, he throws in the towel and buys a backhoe. The problem is, he soon realizes he spent 1.2 million yen on impulse. To make matters worse, this vehicle runs on diesel, which they also don't sell in this world or at Shangri-La. To not waste the investment, the man buys kerosene for camping equipment, but before throwing in the excavator on a whim, he decides to test it on a diesel generator to avoid damaging the vehicle. In the end, after all this trouble, he manages to start the generator and celebrates his success. When night falls, Kenichi takes a bath in the nearby river, although he knows he needs to do something about the insects before they get to him. At that moment, the man remembers Azalea recommended an insect-repelling stone sold at the tool store near the market. When morning comes, Kenichi goes there and is greeted by an old man who, according to the trader himself, looks very much like a wizard. As the attendant comments that he has never seen Kenichi in these lands before, he shares that he came from outside, and the old man shows interest in buying interesting products from foreign territory. Hamada asks if the store has any insect-repelling stones, and promptly, the attendant extends his hand and informs him that it costs 3 silver coins, a price the buyer finds too expensive. To bargain, he offers 2 oranges, and the seller reduces the price to 2 silver coins with the fruits included in the deal. After buying the stone, Kenichi sets up his tent and learns from Manama that the old man is a walking encyclopedia in Dahlia. That said, the man notices a wanted poster on the wall. The criminal depicted is Shaga, the leader of the bandits in this area. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, a man sells the little girl with blue hair, and she is placed in a carriage full of girls. However, the carriage is attacked by Shaga's gang along the way. Returning to the protagonist, he's having fun with his new diesel-powered toy, pulling out all the roots in the middle of his plot. Despite the great effort, it's all for his dream of a peaceful life in this world, although his balance after buying the excavator is quite sad. The next day, the merchant goes to Lord Mallow to show the sugar he wants to sell. Kenichi had high hopes for this product, but judging by the man's reaction when tasting the food, it seems he didn't like it much. Mallow states that salt and sugar are indeed precious, but the kingdom holds exclusive rights over them, so he cannot purchase from Kenichi. This frustrates the merchant as he thought it would yield a good return, but he had another ace up his sleeve, jewels that could fetch some money. After the meeting, Primulo walks through the city and sees merchants passing through the massive gate of Dahlia, but she knows that the professional who has stood out the most is someone she knows, Kenichi Hamada, with his incredible products never seen there before. Upon returning home, Kenichi figures he made 15 gold coins in his dealings with the Mallow company, and with that, he can buy his long-dreamed wooden stall, which was priced at an impressive 1.7 million yen, about 65,000 rias. However, as soon as he buys the product at the store, the house is thrown to the ground completely dismantled. He reads the item's description and discovers that he had to assemble it himself, which is why it was so cheap. Not knowing what to do with all that wood, Kenichi sits atop the pile and laments the work he'll have. Still, he retrieves his tractor and gets to work. To improve his situation, the beast men he had met went hunting and found the man on the way. So to repay the food he made for them that day, the beasts helped Kenichi build his dwelling. Meanwhile, the human kept his stall in the market, and several weeks passed with his friends assisting in the construction. It took just under a month for the wooden cabin to stand. After all that work, Kenichi lies in his new bed to relax, but he's far from finishing everything he plans for the place where he will live. In fact, he needs to arrange electricity, besides painting the walls and the ceiling. Kenichi took another month to complete these tasks. He made the fences, treated the wood, and prepared his bathroom to recycle waste as fertilizers. He added a kitchen with a sink and, for electricity, installed 20 solar panels. Moreover, he built a small stall outside where he could use a drum for bathing, which he filled using a gasoline tank to transport water from the river. Delighted, he enjoys his first bath in the middle of the forest since arriving in this new world. At that moment, he realized that his life as the ruler of his own domain had officially begun. The next day, he informs Azalea that he's moving to his new house, so he thanks her for everything she did and bids farewell, to the young woman's surprise and sadness. In the late afternoon, Kenichi arrives home and summons his bicycle to enjoy a ride and takes some pictures in the forest flowers, but someone was willing to spoil that day. An arrow shoots out of nowhere and hits the ground in front of the bicycle, causing Kenichi to fall hard. To make matters worse, more arrows were shot at him, so the man had to run for his life until he took cover behind a tree trunk. Looking around, he realizes that it was the beast people acting aggressively. Not to be outdone, Kenichi pulls out his slingshot and shoots several times at the attackers, managing to knock one down. Then he sets off some firecrackers to scare the beast people, while summoning his tractor to put an end to this mess. Seeing the huge contraption approaching, the beasts finally flee. After getting rid of the danger, Kenichi tries to understand the motivation behind the attack, until he hears the moan of a feline injured in the woods. Quickly, the man goes to the animal and sees it with an arrow embedded in its thigh. As the animal showed hostility when he approached, Kenichi buys items for the arm and neck to protect himself from a possible bite and removes the arrow from the feline's thigh, which is already too weak to react. Then he cleans the wound with saline solution and uses alcohol and ointment to disinfect it, along with some painkillers. After doing this, the man fears the animal might not survive, so he decides to take it home in a wheelbarrow he bought just for that. Since there are likely no veterinarians in this world, Kenichi goes in search of some healing magic at a store, where the merchant says it was lucky the guy found the lynx as their pelts are highly valued in the market. Later, he returns to Anama, who finds it strange that he rescued an animal. Amid this, Miley arrives unexpectedly and quite excited, as according to her, lynxes are messengers of the gods in her culture, and she would love to see the feline. Seeing the injured lynx, the girl is sure that the dogmen did this and vows not to forgive them for this reason. Kenichi applies more ointment to the animal's wound, which ends up licking the product, so the merchant decides to buy a neck collar to prevent this from happening again. Miley asks if Kenichi is a doctor, and he says no, although he knows first aid. Happy because of the care he took with a sacred animal, the beast woman decides to thank on behalf of the lynx by hunting some birds, which serve for the barbecue at the end of the afternoon. After eating, the freeloader lies in bed and announces that she will spend the night there. Kenichi asks about her job, but the girl is more concerned with the lynx. The human warns that he only has one bed, so Miley takes the opportunity to suggest that they sleep together. Thus, that really happens, and Miley sleeps like a good kitty on top of the man. Several days later, the lynx was recovering well, so the homeowner started working on the plantation. The problem is that, to water the plants, he would have to fetch water from the river every time, which is a huge hassle. To reverse this, the man thinks about digging a well. At night, things were calm while he slept near the lynx until the image of a huge tree appears, where Kenichi slept in the lap of a woman with purple hair. Then the lynx jumps on the poor man's belly, as if saying it's already well. To confirm this theory, the feline goes to the door and makes it clear that it wants Kenichi to open it. When he does, the man watches the animal head into the woods and wishes it a good life. In the following days, Kenichi took some more time off from his stall to tend to his land and complete the well. A week later, he finally managed to pump water directly into his bath barrel. Amidst this, to his surprise, Primula showed up at his house, marveling at everything around her. She explained that she was worried because Kenichi had disappeared from the market for so long and Miley had told her about where he was now living. By the way, she asked what on earth that giant metal thing was. Not knowing how to explain the tractor he had acquired, Kenichi fibbed that it was a familiar he had summoned, and that Primula must keep it a secret that he knew how to use magic. Having gotten himself into this pickle for free, Kenichi wondered if this woman might use it to blackmail him, though he thought she would never do that, being who she was. As the sun was setting, he asked if it wasn't time for the town gates to close, and Primula confirmed it. Confused, the man wanted to know where she planned to sleep that night, so she asked if he would let a woman like her sleep in the woods. He pointed out that he only had one bed, but Primula, of course, saw no issue with this, since she was used to sleeping piled up with a bunch of men on long shopping trips. Hearing this, Kenichi was speechless. While the girl asked what that thing with water was, Kenichi explained that it was a bathtub, and Primula had a great idea. When night fell, she stripped down and bathed to the sound of nocturnal birds. But instead of being relaxing, she became frightened and called out to Kenichi, who was nearby. He approached and suggested she might try bathing some other time since she was scared, but she reminded him that the motto of the Mallow Company was, "Never let an opportunity pass." So Kenichi wondered what Primula would do if he were a bad person, but she didn't think a guy who saves animals and feeds beastmen could be bad. At bedtime, Primula emerged from the bath and was amazed by the bathrobe the house owner had offered, so much so that she even asked him to produce more to sell. Then she also loved the nightgown, and given all the fantastic products this man had, she imagined that one day he might become the greatest merchant in all of Dahlia, if not the entire kingdom of Kaden. However, Kenichi wanted none of that. He thought attracting the attention of nobles only brought trouble, when all he wanted was enough to live a quiet life. Therefore, Primula promised never to mention her supplier's name to the nobles. Kenichi thanked her for her consideration and finished a drawing he was doing of his friend. Later, already lying in her bed, Primula tried to call Kenichi and ask if he was already asleep, while the man pretended to be just to keep things cool. Meanwhile, in a remote region, Shiva was being served by the little girl with purple hair who was being used as a servant. Another man arrives, pushing the child to the ground and handing a bag to the leader, who opens it and sees several gold coins and a letter assigning him a task. When dawn broke, Kenichi took Primula home and thought about the excuse he would give her father upon arrival. However, once there, Mr. Mallow himself apologized for his daughter's behavior and said he didn't know who she took after. In turn, the girl assured she took after her father. As they discussed business at this meeting, Mallow saw Kenichi's bathrobes and nightgowns, which also included some sexy lingerie capable of winning the heart of even the most puritanical man. Mallow was embarrassed to see this business in front of him, while his daughter fell in love with the outfit. In the meantime, the maid Margaret arrived with some accounting books that the boss had requested. Kenichi remarked that it was to be expected of so many ledgers from a great merchant, but Mallow mentioned that the accounting system had changed, so he was having to rewrite everything because the neighboring empire had invented a system known as double-entry bookkeeping. Hearing these words, Kenichi was astonished as that existed in his old world. According to Mallow, this new rule spread quickly thanks to its creator. Then Mallow also showed interest in the bathtub that Primula mentioned, so Kenichi took the opportunity to show a product prototype outside. Arriving there, Mallow introduced a clay pump, another product that was spreading rapidly across the empire. Kenichi, of course, knew well where the inspiration came from, and it was too much of a coincidence that this was happening right after the start of double entry bookkeeping. In other words, Kenichi thought there was someone for his world around. Frustrated with this, he showed the Mallows a drawing of a bicycle that he was inventing named Dracena, but the two laughed at him, thinking that this odd thing was some kind of joke. After that day, Primula began visiting Kenichi more frequently. Tonight, she informed him she would be away for a month starting tomorrow. Kenichi asked if it wouldn't have been better for her to have slept at home, but Primula wanted to try out that lingerie the man had mentioned at the meeting. Kenichi asked if the girl was trying to win someone over. Then she admitted that this man was right in front of her. He couldn't understand how a young and beautiful woman like her could be attracted to an old man like him. But Primula thought he was incredible, and besides, her father wouldn't mind. Confused by this revelation, Kenichi asked for time to absorb the information, as something like this involved a lot of responsibility. Thus, Primula asked if they could at least share the same bed, and the man agreed, but only for sleeping. Later, while she was already asleep, he wondered what Primula saw in a guy like him. The next morning, the woman returned to town, so Kenichi was left alone at home, at least for a few seconds, because that armored warrior had just appeared at his fence. He introduced himself as Norseball and said he had been investigating rumors that a suspicious man had begun living in the forest. Then he found out now that it was just Kenichi. That said, Norseball asked what the heck those gadgets were. Since he couldn't call the gadgets solar panels, Kenichi tried to explain that it was something related to magic, meaning now another person had to keep the secret that he was in fact a mage. In this case, Norseball went a bit further and asked for a little favor, and Kenichi understood that he had to give up 3 steel ingots to buy his silence. Happy to have material to forge a good sword, the warrior shares that a mage with a unique magic has appeared in the Empire, capable of producing a large quantity of a yellowish sauce called mayonnaise. By the way, it's said that this guy defeated a dragon using mayonnaise. Knowing this, Kenichi realizes that this mage who has reincarnated in this world is really pushing the boundaries. Hey guys, the source will be in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming videos. See you.